Folks, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Uncensored. Oh, it's been a great day, man. We've been out at the pool, we've been hanging out with friends, and now we're talking football. How else can you have a good day like that? So we're talking ACC. That's been our thing. Last week we kind of had some more before that talking about the ACC, but we're going in alphabetical order. We're rolling on, and tonight we've got Duke, Florida State, and Georgia Tech. Last week we talked a little bit about uniforms. One of my buddies pointed out, he's like, "What do you think about Troy's uniform?" I was like, "I love Troy's uniforms." Okay, I just simply forgot. There's so many good uniforms out there. But if you want to talk about uniforms, go check our last episode. We're doing previews, okay, and we got a lot of teams to cover, so we're rolling through them. Trevor, big teams tonight. A lot of changes, really on Duke and Georgia Tech.
There's some changes. There's definitely some changes. Duke, obviously, with Elko going to Texas A&M, obviously they're going to be a whole regime change.
Yeah,
and I'm part of me is kind of surprised on the coach that they picked, but whatever.
I'm really curious to see how it plays out, and let's just roll right into Duke.
Yeah, because
they're right here, and that's what we're doing. Duke, obviously, Elko left. That left a lot of bad taste in their mouth because they had a promising season last year. And, Riley Leonard, he ended up, after Elko left, he left to Notre Dame, which we'll talk about Notre Dame in another episode. I don't like that destination. The way that Sam Hartman went, I fear a little bit for Riley Leonard. But with Duke, they did go out and get Manny Diaz, okay? And he's proven himself, I think, as a defensive coordinator. He's had a top, like last year at Penn State, he had a top 5 defense in the country. He's very aggressive. And I do think you're going to see that here. I mean, he's got a philosophy, and it's going to continue.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, with Manny Diaz, I think he's a great coordinator. He failed so horribly in Miami that my confidence in him being able to coach an up and coming Duke team, it's wavering a bit. But I mean, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he does run good defenses. Obviously, he had a really good defense at Penn State. So he brought in Jonathan Brewer to be the OC and QB coach. He was the QB and co-offensive coordinator at SMU. Last year, he brought in these are just some notables. I don't think these are all of the coaches he brought in, but these are some notables. He brought in Jeff, I'm going to brutalize his name, Jeff Norrid, I think. Nerid? Nope, that doesn't sound right. But anyway, he's the O-line coach.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. He's the new O-line coach. He spent the last 3 seasons as the running game coordinator at the Raging Cajuns down in Louisiana. And then I have the other notable is Jonathan Patke, defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. Last year, he was the defensive coordinator at Brendan's favorite, Texas State.
Oh, I love me some Texas State this year. And I fully intend to go there against Arizona State. I'm excited for that. We'll talk more about that down the line. But I do think that Duke has done a good job at building his staff. I like you said, I'm curious to see how Manny does here as opposed to what he did at Miami. But honestly, nobody's really doing good at Miami. I mean, they thought Mario Cristobal was going to be, the save all, and look what the hell's happened there. Now, we are going to talk about Miami, of course. We're going to talk about all these teams, but we're focused on Duke. And last year, it was looking real, real good until they blew the game late against Notre Dame. They pulled like an inverse. If you remember, Notre Dame blew it against Ohio State earlier in the season. Well, Duke did the same thing against Notre Dame, effectively. Maybe not the 10 men on the field, but they just let them walk down and go win the game like that. And then, of course, Riley Leonard got hurt. And then Florida State, came along, and that he tried to play it. He tried to go through, and it was close until he totally went out of the game. He just could not go anymore. And then Florida State, the floodgates opened and finished them off. And after that, really, their season was over.
Yep.
They did play Troy in the bowl game and won 17-10, but still, that was such a promising start. It ended, with 4 losses and just not the way they wanted.
Right.
This year, a 6.5, point over under. I mean, there's promise there with what they have, especially I think on defense. But that offense, like you said, new coordinator, it's going to be, how is it going to run? Is it Malik Murphy? Is he going to start?
He has to.
To me, he has.
He has to. There's looking at their roster, looking at nothing's really changed other than Malik Murphy and Kendi Charles on the D line coming from Liberty. Other than that, Duke's roster has been gutted by the transfer portal. They had 12 incoming. Those only 2, Malik Murphy and Kendi Charles, were really the only 2 real notables that were incoming. The outgoing, however, is a different story for Duke. And that is Riley Leonard, we all know about. RJ Oben, the edge rusher, went to Notre Dame, which they luckily they don't have to play them this year, which is nice that they don't have to see him. Then what is it? Jordan Waters, running back, went to NC State. They're definitely going to
their lead running back.
They're definitely going to see him this year. And let's see, I got D lineman went to Virginia. D lineman went to Virginia Tech. Brandon Johnson, defensive back, went to Oregon. Dorian Mossy, like you were just about to mention, linebacker, went to Auburn. They just got gutted, so it's going to be a completely different team, really. And the jury's kind of out. It's just going to see. We're just going to have to see game. Really, I'd say game 2 of the schedule. We'll find out what Duke is when they go into Northwestern and play them.
Absolutely.
So we'll find out if they can hang with I don't consider necessarily Northwestern a powerhouse. However, they usually give people problems, and they are a Big Ten team.
Especially the way Northwestern finished last season. They started horribly. The coaching change and everything, but they went and beat Utah in a bowl game. And I know Utah was a little hampered with their quarterback situation, but they were still solid elsewhere across the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Northwestern is going to be a team that you cannot take lightly. I mean, this like you said, that's an early start for Duke, and they better be ready to go.
Yep.
And Malik Murphy better be ready to go. You transfer from Texas to be the head guy here. You can't get beat out by Loftus here in this, in fall ball or even at the end of spring. And now when Riley Leonard went out last year, their quarterback situation, I know I was reading some boards and they said they played pretty well. I remember watching that Florida State game, and they were neutered. As soon as he was gone, that team was totally different. There was no passing threat at all.
Yeah. They were.
Now, I know Loftus is better than what came in that game.
Yeah.
They did switch it up, but still.
But immediately they were. When Riley Leonard was in, I don't think they were necessarily one-dimensional. But when he left, they, it showed obviously at the field, but it almost felt like they were one-dimensional because they kind of left it in Riley Leonard's hands the entire game. Mm-hmm. There was no real, even though they did have a really good running back in Jordan Waters, they never put it in his hands to take it off the pressure of making Riley Leonard run around like a chicken with his head cut off, using his legs as much as he did last season. I think all in the end probably destroyed them. And that, not to jump way too far forward, but that is also my concern for Texas A&M and potentially having Elko also do the same thing with that quarterback and making him use his legs way too much.
I will say Leonard, he used his legs in really opportune moments, and they leaned on him. But like you said, during the Florida State game, you could feel that momentum just completely get sucked out of the stadium.
Yep.
I know he was injured, and an ankle injury for a quarterback is horrible. But like you said, once he's no run threat because he can't move. they're going to feast on that running back in the running game because that was strong for Duke. And I still think it can be this year. All right. They
I
still
think
have
Malik
Jacquez
Murphy will.
Moore.
I think Malik Murphy throws a different monkey wrench because I think he's more dynamic of a runner than Riley Leonard is.
Sure.
And so we'll see.
I agree. And I think Murphy can do good. And he had solid games at Texas when Ewers was out. The one that I remember, most is the game against Kansas State when he was in and they were leading. They had a good lead. And then all of a sudden it started to drip away after some mistakes from Murphy and things got ugly kind of quick for Texas and they were able to hold on.
Yeah.
Murphy is now you're expected to be the starter after you transfer. Go out there, handle your business, and I think you can lead Duke to a pretty solid season. Mm-hmm. But you look at the schedule, the way it sets up, Trevor, like you said, Northwestern early, but after that, you've got UConn, which is not a bad team. Okay, they've gotten better, I think. You've got Middle Tennessee, North Carolina, and then Georgia Tech, which we're going to talk about here soon, which, I mean, they've got a whole new defensive staff. So you're looking at these teams, and then you got a bye week. That's not a bad start. If you can get through that, you're in pretty good shape before your hardest stretch of Florida State, SMU, Miami, and NC State. I mean, and then you got Virginia Tech on the back end of that off the second bye week. Yep. Okay, so it's not going to be easy. That 6.5 is there for a reason.
Yeah, they're pretty much anticipating them winning their first 6 games, probably being ranked, and then just falling off the deep end.
Falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a rough schedule, but it's a doable schedule, especially if Malik Murphy kind of holds serve, plays to his potential, plays to what he showed flashes of last season. I think that they're going to be in a good position. And I don't know, they might be back into that, it's just Duke type of mentality across the country now. Yeah. It's not, they're these up and coming risers, but they're kind of falling back to being a mid to low tier ACC team. Not saying that's what the talent says. I'm just saying that's what might be the perception across the country.
Sure. No, I think you're right. And like I said, when you look at the portal, they did lose a bunch to Power 4 opponents. When they brought people in, you got a guy from Stanford who's now in the ACC, Liberty. You did get Murphy from Texas, offensive lineman Zachary Franks from Northwestern, which you're going to play them this year, and then Alex Howard from TAMU. They have the 44th ranked transfer class, so it's not bad, but you lost a lot. So let's plug it in. Let's see how it goes. I think you're going to have to lean on that running game and try to get Jacquez Moore going and try to build that cohesion on the line and just see what happens. Malik Murphy has to play smart and good, but I'm going to give Manny Diaz a little bit of time. Let him work, let him see how things go here, because Duke's obviously a much different situation than Miami. And I think that he can make Duke a good program, continue what Elko built. You got to, set your standard and just start building that recruiting class and keep attacking the portal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually a little more disappointed with their lack of activity in the spring portal. It was I was kind of surprised actually with how much they lost.
Agreed.
Why weren't they active about trying to go get maybe one of the running backs that popped into the portal, or a defensive one of these defensive guys, because there's a few good ones in there.
Yep, I agree, and we'll see what Manny's feeling and just how this first season goes. But they did get a lot of guys from you got like Penn and like Cornell. Looks like you get a lot of like the Ivy League types and FCS programs. But hey, they can be good filler. There's nothing saying they're not good players. It's just, you really want to try to backfill with guys that are being, recruited heavily and play well by other power teams too.
If you ask most pundits or whatever you want to call it, really a good indicator for how good these recruits or these transfers are is who's actually going after them. It really is an indicator, because if you look at, like, for example, we talked about it a little bit as far as the quarterback position. We had Kyle McCord go into the transfer portal, and we saw who was interested in Kyle McCord, and then the replacement at Ohio State now. When he went into the portal, he had not only Ohio State, but he had USC, he had Oregon, he had a few others that were, and it definitely lends a different outlook on the type of transfers you're getting on who was actually trying to get them.
Yeah, and again, that's not to say that one can't bust, one can't, boom. It's just, different perspective. But Duke, again, lean on the running game. I know you lost Waters, but really try to help out Murphy this year and just kind of set a stone to build off for Manny Diaz. They don't have a lot of returning production either, so that's a little bit dangerous. I know we talked about them losing a lot, but lean on that running game, go from there. Trevor, next team, I know there's a lot of controversy about them last season.
Woo-hoo, where is it ever?
I mean, they had a hell of a year. I mean, really, they did. Let's talk about Florida State.
Yes, all right. Let's.
13-1 regular season. And then the bowl game happened. Obviously they got snubbed from going to the playoffs. We all agree about that. We're not going to talk too much about them, getting snubbed. We've talked about that all last year.
Ad nauseum.
It sucked. It's BS. And then they got blown out by Georgia, for whatever reasons. You guys, I know they had
fill
a lot
in the blank on the reason.
Everything else, none of that matters anymore. It's 2023, 2024. It's time for a new year.
Yep.
And they start off versus Georgia Tech in Ireland.
Yep.
Which is a funky meeting. I like these Ireland games. They're just so random, I feel like.
Very random. However, it does here's the thing is that FSU did everything to help themselves in the transfer portal.
Oh, absolutely.
They did everything they possibly could to help themselves.
Yes.
I mean, depending on who you talk to, they probably had a better portal overall wise than a lot of teams, including teams like Ohio State.
Yeah.
They absolutely pillaged Alabama and the SEC in general. I think I had 7 out of the top 10 transfers that went to FSU came from the SEC. And all of them, mind you, all of them were 4-star transfers. The ones I'm referring to, at least.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. They went out and they went all in on the portal. And look, I said, they went all in. Ohio State, this isn't just about you when I say that. Look, there's a lot of teams that did. Florida State has the 6th ranked portal class. Texas A&M, Alabama, Oregon, and Ole Miss are all ahead of them.
Yep.
Ohio State has the 8th ranked. And when I say they went all in, that means you're going to find the best pieces to help your team. I'm not saying it in a derogatory way.
Nope, not at all.
I can appreciate it because that's part of the game. Go out and get who you're going to get. And Florida State, Trevor, like you said, did exactly that. I mean, they went out and got who they wanted. They're loaded. When I look at them, they have an over-under of 9.5. This is his 4th season, coming off a 13-win regular season. They've got everything going for them. You lost 22 to the portal, but you brought 17 back in.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of them they're high talent. They just didn't want to sit around at Bama anymore. Obviously, there's a coaching change. You got guys coming in from Georgia, from Miami, from West Virginia, LSU.
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me. But if you look at the transfer portal, most of what FSU pulled off as far as the top end goes came in the first transfer window, right after the coaching changes happened. They pounced on that, and more importantly, they did not lose these particular ones in the spring portal.
Yeah.
So it leads me to believe that at minimum, outside of the quarterback position, because we already know what that is, but it leads me to believe that majority of these the top 10 transfers that came into FSU will be at minimum have significant playing time, if not going to be starting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, real quick, while we're talking about this, let's talk about their schedule because, wow,
Yes.
they've got a stretch that could be good, could be bad. Okay, so it's going to roll back to how does Duke start out because that's how it kind of looks to me. If Duke is a solid, really good team, then the middle of their schedule is a tough stretch with SMU, Clemson, Duke, Miami, and potentially UNC, depending on a lot of factors. But
Yeah.
more than likely, UNC is not going to be an ACC factor.
Another pretender. And
Again,
I agree with you. It's between the bye weeks and really, like you said just before. And like we mentioned when we talk about California too, I do think the ACC is deeper this year than it was last year. Cal has improved. Boston College has pieces, but again, it all rides on the quarterback. Memphis, we've talked about them in our Group of 5 preview. They're one of the best Group of 5 teams out there. You cannot take them lightly. Georgia Tech has a really solid offense, and we're going to talk about them here very soon on this episode. And then we talked about Clemson last episode. Again, this is a contender, so they have a tough schedule. But with what they have,
yeah,
I think this is a very winnable schedule, and especially the way it's set up. You get Georgia Tech and then Boston College, 2 teams you should beat, and then a bye week, and then you have Memphis, Cal, SMU, which you're kind of like progressively getting tougher. It feels like
it literally is like a ladder effect. Like it's just like
that's kind of what it feels like.
Because like we talked about in last episode, Cal, we both kind of feel like Cal could be a surprise team because of what they have on their team.
They can take you under if you let them.
Yep.
And Clemson, we know is Clemson. They're gonna have strong defense, even though they lost people. They still recruit well. They've got strong players on that. They have a good offensive line. They have a good running ability. Klubnik has to play smart. But then, like you said, you go play Duke. They're changing. This is a changing team. You should win that game as Florida State. But this season rides on DJU and the receivers. And what I was reading, and what I've seen from a lot of their insider reports, all this stuff that I've been reading about Florida State, is they're concerned about the wide receiver room, and really they want to know, Hakeem Williams, are you going to step up? He was a big time recruit for them. They haven't seen much from him, and they from all the stuff that I've read, they haven't really seen anything from him in the spring game either.
Yeah.
No, I know it's a spring game. You can't judge too much, but you can kind of get a feel like, hey, this guy's starting to step out. He's starting to, kind of show himself a little bit more.
They did.
So
they did pick up the wide receiver position, but they did pick up Malik Benson.
Yes.
So
he's
more than
wide
likely
one.
He's going to be their guy.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they can get this kid kind of out of his own head. Maybe, I don't know, but they need to get it going.
And things are different in game 2. There's not saying he's a bust or anything like that. It's just let's see, can you get these wide receivers going?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, they did go get Benson, and they're really happy with how he's performed. You got Jaylen Brown coming in from LSU. He was a 4-star transfer. You hope that he steps up, and you did get some offensive line help from Bama, from Harvard even.
Yeah.
You got a lot of help. It's going to ride on DJU and these wide receivers, because I think their line is going to be fine. You're going to have a strong defense again.
Should have a decent running game with Roydell Williams coming in.
Yes, Roydell coming in is huge for them.
Yep. But one little note that I did find out just 2 days ago is that Destin Hill, one of the young wide receivers, will not go the entire 2024 season. So that's one wide receiver guaranteed not to go. He wasn't necessarily projected
down during the spring game, right?
I believe so. Yeah. He re-aggravated a previous injury, and I guess I don't have too much details on it, but they did state he will not play this season.
Yeah, that's tough. I hate seeing that. And that's always the first thing in spring ball. Please don't get hurt. Just try to get out of there without injury. But that shit happens. Like, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but look at Michigan and Rod Moore. You know, one of the top returning safeties in the country goes down with an ACL tear. It's horrible, but you got to adapt. You got to overcome. And, you know, again, I went back to the schedule just real quick to look at it. And I do think it's very winnable. I told a friend of ours, Jared, you know, that we've talked to since we started, you know, he asked a little while ago, and I said, I can see 10-win season for sure. I mean, Clemson, you got Notre Dame there. Miami still kind of, how is Cristobal going to coach them? I know they got more talent this year with Cam Ward, but I mean, I think it's winnable with the talent that they have. And you could easily go to the ACC championship. You just got to play your game. You got to play smart, and it's going to ride on DJU. It really is. I know he's got talent around him. Let's see how he comes in and performs, because he had really good moments at Oregon State. He had some rough moments. He had good moments at Clemson, and then he had rough moments. So
there's definitely one thing I can say about DJU. FSU fans, you need to prepare yourself for a fall off of QB play. You will not have the same QB that you had last year before the injury. That man was a different level of quarterback than DJU is.
I love Jordan Travis.
Oh my God. He's a great quarterback for them, but DJU will not be that dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a lot of people that do. I know Florida State fans are really excited to have him. And I think he's going to be good for you guys. I really do. But I do agree. I think there's going to be a drop off from what you had last season in the quarterback play. Maybe we're wrong. It's very possible. We're not, you know, saying, you know, it can't happen, that he can't be better. But just from what we've seen, you know, it's kind of like we've talked about. We know who you are. You know, we've seen who you are. Maybe he changed. Maybe this situation's better for him. We'll see. But I do think it's going to be a little bit more of a drop off personally. But I can still see 10 wins, 11 wins, depending. You got to play your game. You got to move the football. But it depends on that wide receiver room and the quarterback play, in my opinion. Trev, anything else about FSU before we jump on?
Nope. I would say right now that it's them and Clemson, and probably Miami and NC State to really be the toughest outs. Oh yeah, Notre Dame's probably there too, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, that's one you've got. It's at Notre Dame too, and Jared mentioned it to me as well. You know, they've had historically not a lot of success playing at Notre Dame, so you got to go into Indiana and beat them there. You know, so you cannot stumble, or this season could go south if you take any of these teams early light. You know, watch out. You guys might be a little bit more upset than you were at the end of last season. Yeah. And that's not a shot. I'm just simply saying, hey, be ready. These teams are solid, okay? One of the teams that, we were just talking about the Georgia schedule. The first team that Florida State plays is Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about
full circle here.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. It's the ACC. You play each other. I do like that. You know, you're constantly playing all these teams, and even the new ones. You got SMU in there. You know, you got Cal in there early for Florida State. So let's go talk about Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, Brent Key's in his second year. They went 7-6 overall last season. Really not bad. And Georgia Tech's a team that I classify as a sleeping giant in college football. I feel the same way about Houston and a few others. They went 5-3 in the ACC. As you look at that 2023 schedule, they started off with a tough loss to Louisville in a tight game. They lost to Ole Miss by about 20 some points. They lost to Bowling Green. Okay, that I'm like. Now, I know I talked shit about the Bowling Green uniforms last week. I'm not shitting on them now, but come on. You're Georgia Tech. You should beat Bowling Green. And then you lost to Boston College. You lost to Clemson, and you lost to Georgia. Georgia was a tight game now. But there's a couple of these games that I feel like you shouldn't lose, or at least keep them closer. But Brent Key was not happy with how his defense played last year, and he fired the whole damn staff. The whole defensive staff got rid of him after one season. Fired him. I can respect that. I respect. Hey, you're not performing to my standard. Get the hell out. It's time to try something new because we got to build this thing. And this is a Georgia Tech team that we all grew up watching the triple option from them, and now they've got Haynes King out there. They had an explosive offense. It was a fun team to watch.
Yeah. Look, I don't mind the changes that they're doing. And Tyler Santucci, I think he's gonna do well for him, but I'm not. We'll see. The jury's out on the new DC.
Yeah.
But Brendan, I have a hard time when I'm looking at their schedule giving them more than 4 wins.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm looking at FSU, probably a loss.
Yeah.
Georgia State and Syracuse. Georgia State, yes. Syracuse, probably. The VMI, yes. And then you get into the ACC play. Louisville lost. Duke, more than likely a loss. UNC, that might be a win. So I think I'm at 4 now. And then I think they lose every game from then on out with Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, and Georgia to fill out the rest of your season.
That end is tough. I mean, that's a tough finish. Really, the last 5. Sorry, I'm counting. We got to use all fingers here. Yeah, I know you got NC, North Carolina, but like you said, you got Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, bye week, Miami, bye week, NC State, and then Georgia. Yeah, I counted on my fingers. That's 5 straight games of holy shit. Good luck.
And I would say they will not be favored in any of those games.
I tend to agree with you. And now, again, let's look at this team. Okay, they've got 8 returning starters on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Haynes King's going to lead this team, and they were a fun offense last year, and Haynes did a really wonderful job for them.
Yep.
And I feel like with the returning starters, the production, and I mean they had a solid portal class, 43rd in the portal. I feel like they can go out and score on these defenses, but the defense is what I'm the most concerned about.
Yep.
That they lost 32 players to the transfer portal.
They did. They lost
32.
Ton. And the thing about it is once again, folks, when you look at the transfers that go out, look at where they end up. And the top 3 ended up at South Carolina, Utah, and Michigan State. That was the top 3 that went out. And I mean, it tells you everything that all of these transfers went to Power 4 schools. I mean, they don't get me wrong, they got a decent one in Romello Height, an edge rusher from USC, but yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. But
I will say when I'm looking at the portal again, and you see a lot of these guys entered in the spring, a lot of them are uncommitted. You've got a guy did go, one of their players, Eddie Kelly, went to Missouri. You got a guy went to Connecticut, but a lot of these guys are uncommitted at NC State. But then you're seeing like Morehead State, you're seeing UAB, Arkansas State, Georgia State, UMass. So kind of like the middle, not to be derogatory on it, but the mid-range conferences, these, the MAC, the Sun Belt, these types of players. So are you really losing too much, or they're just depth guys? And you go out and you bring in 13 transfers from Illinois, Cincinnati, Penn State, USC, Georgia, Florida State, Louisville, Tennessee. You're bringing in Power 4 talent. They may not be as highly recruited as you expect, but they're not. These guys were recruited and went to these big programs for a reason. They've obviously got talent. So let's see if they can build something with that. Because you're looking at, I mean, you've brought in safeties and stuff to replace the talent. Anytime you fire or you lose coaches, you're going to lose the guys that recruited by that, those coaches. That's just going to happen. football's a game of relationships. As soon as they're gone, these players are like, I don't care about this damn school. I came here for him. I like that guy. So I'll be curious to see how this defense runs. But like I said, offense, you've got plenty of returning starters. Brent Key seemed to have them going in the right direction. I mean, like I said, 7-6 for Georgia Tech is solid. That's a good season for them. But again, it's going to go off of this defense and how the new staff gets them rolling, and if they can put these portal targets in and get them running, linebackers, cornerbacks, edges, all this defensive help you went and got. You better hope they freaking show up, and you better hope they work out. Otherwise, it could be really long, and every single game can be trying to be a damn shootout.
Man, I'm just looking at the schedule. I'm just like, I'm struggling to give them a 5th win. Like I'm struggling. I'm thinking maybe Duke. Like if they could maybe go back to back and beat Duke and UNC.
Yeah.
Then that's their 5th win probably. But outside of that, I think Louisville will be too much for them. FSU certainly will be too much for them. Notre Dame, maybe Virginia Tech, but that's at Virginia Tech, and that's not an easy place to play.
No. And these guys in Vegas know a thing or two. That's why they have these over-under set at what they have. And like I said, Georgia Tech is at 5.5 on the over-under. And like you said, Trevor, the way you started, you got Florida State. Syracuse isn't going to be a slouch. They've got a new head coach, and they've been really working the portal too.
And Kyle McCord is not a bad quarterback, no matter what anyone says.
I absolutely agree with you. You don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The dude went 11-1 at Florida State. Yes, he had a lot of talent. He had Marvin Harrison. You still got to throw him the damn ball, okay? And he did really well in that regard, in my opinion. No, what is he? Haskins or any of these Stroud or no. I mean, that's hard to to be, okay. But he's a good quarterback. I feel like he got ran out of town. Either way,
he did.
Syracuse has him now. That to me, that makes him even more dangerous, especially with this new head coach. But you're right, Trevor. I look VMI, sure, Georgia State, sure. And then it gets tough. Like you said, maybe Syracuse a toss-up. Duke's a toss-up.
And UNC, we don't really even know what we're going to get in UNC, but it's at North Carolina. So
that's true. That at North Carolina, at Virginia Tech is tough. And at Syracuse.
Yep. At Georgia.
I'm not even trying to laugh about it. I hope that the defense for Georgia Tech is there because I think they've got a really strong offense that they can work with. But I hope the defense is there for them. And then maybe you can beat Miami again on some BS, when they should have kneeled the ball and instead they fumbled. Yeah, we all remember that, Miami and Cristobal. We remember that one. Jeez, Pete. But no, man, I'm with you on it. I think it's probably going to be a tough year, but there's potential there. You've got toss-up games that you could win and probably still maybe get to 7 max. I feel like max would probably be in that range as you're stealing. But again, it all depends on how Miami and Cristobal do and how Virginia Tech does and what UNC is. The rest, I mean, Louisville too, maybe. But your offense needs to be clicking on all cylinders at all times. So we'll see what happens with Georgia Tech. But again, I don't feel too confident in them. Now, like I said, we're not going to blow smoke up everybody's ass. Oh, this team could easily win. No, we're going to tell you how we feel. We're not hating on teams. It's just how it is, man. Every year, somebody's going to be winners. Somebody's going to be losers. I'm not saying Georgia Tech's going to be a loser. I'm just saying it might be rough with this defense because you went out and maybe it can't be any worse than what it was. So if it's any better, hell, 7 wins, 8 wins.
Yeah.
But you got to have that offense rolling.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of looking at it overview, like looking back at Duke, FSU, and Georgia Tech schedule. It's like I feel like the ACC on certain teams, they're just backloading like these schedules because it feels like that way for kind of FSU other than the Charleston Southern game, which I don't even count. No offense, Charleston Southern, but you ain't on that level. And Duke's kind of the same way. They got that backloaded stuff. I mean, Wake Forest is Wake Forest at the very end, but you still got to go through back to back to back, going through FSU, SMU, at Miami, then out to North Carolina State in just that 4-game stretch, and then you got to come back home and play Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that maybe Georgia Tech, you got to also, before Florida State, you have to go at Georgia Tech before you play Florida State. So with Duke, with regards to Duke, I mean,
sure.
And Florida State's not liking their schedule probably any more than anyone else.
Yeah.
So these schedules are getting tougher as we're diving deep into these ACC teams. I feel like we're starting to have a little more appreciation for the parity within the ACC conference.
Agreed. And I was talking to a friend on Twitter. We were having discussions about them after our last episode, about Boston College, and he agreed. He was like, I feel like they're a lot deeper than what people are giving them credit for, and I kind of agree.
Yeah.
Last year I didn't necessarily agree. I feel like we all knew who the top teams were in the ACC last year.
Yeah,
and
it was pretty evident.
It was pretty clear cut. This year it feels like, again, when you're looking at the depth and the quarterback play and changes like that, this is going to be a tough conference to play in, and especially if you're one of the mid-tier guys, you got to show up and you got to be ready, because knife's edge, like I said last week, you could fall off real freaking quick.
Right. Yeah, and to kind of go back to your point about that, about seeing, like, it kind of seems kind of wide open. I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that we just don't know a lot about the teams and a lot about these players that are coming in. Even DJU, there's question marks coming into Florida State. Like, is he going to be able to actually manage the offense the way that he was he was the centerpiece at Oregon State. However, he's still a centerpiece, but he needs to just get the ball out, let these playmakers play, and go from there.
Agreed. It's going to be an interesting season for the ACC, and I'm really excited to keep diving into the rest of these teams. Like I said, we're going alphabetical order. We're going to keep, knocking them out, and, trying to 3 shows a week approximately. So these are going to fly off the charts, and try to get you guys your teams, and make sure, when you guys hear about your teams, retweet it, send it off to your buddies, and let us know. We're reading stuff. We're researching. We want to hear what you have to say from the inside perspective of, hey, that's your team. Everybody feels different about their team. It's different hearing it from an outside perspective than it is, when you're in your own echo chamber and oh yeah, we're feeling good. Even when I'm on the Michigan boards, everybody's really excited. They're like, man, we could do this. And for me, I'm like, I love what Michigan's got outside of, the quarterback play. I'm a little bit concerned. So we're going to give it to you straight. We would give you to us straight about Michigan, about Alabama, any team. We're not going to sugarcoat it. So let us know what you think, and let's talk football. That's what we're doing this for. ACC's looking solid. We got more teams coming up. So make sure you guys subscribe and stay tuned. Trevor, anything else about these teams that we've talked about tonight?
And I'm just going to say, I apologize for the sniffling. My allergies are kicking my ass. So I apologize.
Me too, man. It's been a rough day. My eyes like baggy and watery. I'm like, my throat's fucking itching. It's been rough.
But yeah, as far as the ACC, about more specifically these 3 teams, Duke and FSU, I think they should have optimism. Georgia Tech, you got some pieces. Just try and build off of what you did last year. Even with the changing with the transfer portal, it changes kind of the whole dynamic of your team. All you can do is kind of stay positive and work with what you got.
Yeah, they just have a tough draw on their schedule. That is all.
They do. They have a very
schedule
tough
was
draw.
Different, I would probably feel a little bit better. But starting with Florida State, ending with NC State and Georgia, I mean that alone is tough. So it's schedule hurts Georgia Tech here this year. And I even think I said that in one of our episodes about schedules. Let me go pull this thing up real quick. because we talked about who's got the hardest schedules, who's got the easiest schedules. And
we all know who has the hardest. We all talk about it.
Look who's on my list. Number 4, Georgia Tech, top 10 hardest schedule.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. Not saying it can't happen, but you got to get that offense rolling. Haynes King's got to be perfect, and he cannot get injured.
Yep.
But we'll see what happens, guys. Either way, ACC continues to roll on. Again, subscribe, like, comment, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I don't care where you send us some stuff. Let's talk football.
Yeah.
That's what we
don't
love
forget
to do,
comment. Do not forget to comment, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's just send us some questions. We will touch base on just about everything at some point in time. And maybe some of your questions will get onto our next live stream.
Yep. Yeah, because we're trying to do some more live streams. We did one last night. It was kind of fun.
We want to try and get some more interaction. We want to try and get some more interaction on them live streams. Even if you guys want to throw questions at us while we're doing the live stream, we welcome it. We welcome it all.
Oh yeah, fire for effect. That's what we're about.
Fire for effect. That's right.
Well, again, we appreciate you guys. We hope you have a great night. We got more ACC content coming to you very soon. You have a good evening.
Take it easy, everybody.